Hi, I'm Author Assist, proud sponsor of the 3-Act Structure Show on the Go Indie Now platform. Author Assist offers affordable services and one-on-one training to independent authors. I help them from brainstorming an idea to publishing and the promotion and marketing of the book. I have 2 podcasts, Narrations by KK and Behind the Pen. I'm the host of the radio show Author Assist on the Artist First Radio Network, and I'm also a multi-award winning filmmaker. Love creating book trailers. I'm also a graphic designer and offer at least another 20 services that will help authors navigate and stand out. If you're a new author and you're holding the copy of your book in your hands, thinking, now what? That's when you need Author Assist. Contact me for a service sheet at kgantasauthораssist@gmail.com.
When we deconstruct the elements of story and its structure, whether you acknowledge 3 acts or not, our focus shifts to one aspect that connects us all, the characters. Since the dawn of storytelling itself, there has always been one side's hero and one side's villain. Now, where you may fall in who you support or relate to might shift, but it's always there. However, these days, it's even more layered and complicated. When we have been able to nuance and finite roles and involvement, gray the black and white. It's that examination we will be doing this season. And we'll be doing it in 3-act structure. All season long, we have looked at the various roles our characters can occupy. But the truth is, their role in our story is the story. So being everything can be a heavy burden. Some rise to the occasion, and some fall. But no matter what, it's always how it has to be. And that's how it goes for all characters. How much do you value character as far as the story structure goes? Where would you rank it in terms of its importance for you?
Well, 10, of course. Without character, there's no structure, there's no plot, there's no story. They're the ones that make the story. They're the ones that whisper in our ears and tell us, that we've fucked up and we've got to go a different route. Yes, characters are everything for any story. Short story, novel, novella. To make a plot work, you need characters, and you need your main character. You have to have a main character. You can't have lots of small little individual characters. It just wouldn't work. You need someone for the reader to cheer for, to care about, to get angry at, to cry. You need them to feel the emotions, and the main character does that.
Yeah, I was actually doing the exact opposite as Karina was. I was going to say characters rank number 1 for me. But, 1 out of 10, same thing. For me, I'm not one of the authors who plot. I don't go with plot first. I know a lot of right-to-market authors do. My characters always come to me, and it's them that moves the plot forward. It's them that causes, my standalone or my only few book series to turn into 8 books. I follow their lead. And without a good character, the best plot in the world can and will fall flat completely.
Yeah, if you don't care about the characters, then they're not going to be affected by anything the character goes through. Like, I've watched so many horror movies. I'm very visual. Like, I see movies in my head when I write. And so I use movies as a lot of references. But I've watched a lot of horror movies where characters die. And, like, frankly, I just don't care.
Or you care
at all. It's just there to be done. It's like, oh, gore. And I'm like Lily. My characters pretty much, I come up with the situation and then they tell me what they do. And I just write it down. And sometimes I'm like, oh, Lord, would you please stop? They're like, nope, not yet. That's always fun.
The character has to be the central focus of your story. And it has to be the right character for the story. If you try to force the wrong character into a story, it's not going to sound right. You're going you're going to be beating your head against the wall going, why isn't this working? Well, it's because you have the wrong person in there. It would be like, casting Humphrey Bogart in an Abbott and Costello movie. It just doesn't work.
And it's not only the main character too, but it's all of the other supporting characters as well, right? You have to like them, and it's not always, but there's always the side characters that help sort of they come together to form that thread that helps, the fabric that weaves the story that you're writing. So without that, it's it doesn't matter then.
You kind of come up with like the story or the premise or where it is that you kind of want to explore, but then it's the story then comes from what challenges the characters the most. You want to give your characters as hard a time as possible, really, and throw as many obstacles in front of them and see how they cope with it, because that's where drama comes from, and that's where it's it makes them more. When you see them overcoming challenges, we all do it. It makes them more compelling. So you don't have to make sure. And this is if you want to write anti-heroes, or if you want to write a kind of like grayer characters, or even villains. As long as they're compelling and you want to read about them, that's the important thing. So it's like you want to challenge them and give them things to overcome, and from that, the minutiae of the story comes from that. But the plot beats and the arcs and everything come from those challenges. So it's about figuring out, knowing the characters, knowing which ones are going to be like the leads of the book or whatever it is that you're working on, and knowing the things that are going to kind of challenge them the most, and working from there.
So all season long, we've been talking about the different archetypes of characters. So I want to know from each of you, what archetype do you tend to lean on most to help? Obviously, the main character and the protagonist and antagonist are going to probably be center of your story, more than not. So what archetypes do you like to use often that will enhance them, that will matter to the story the most?
Foils for me. I love putting two mismatched characters together. It's almost like a comedy team. You need a straight man and you need the jester, and they play off of each other. And that also helps with actual character development, because you see that those two opposite people coming together and kind of finding that mutual ground. Sometimes it doesn't work, and they end up going opposite directions and becoming antagonists to each other. So I just love foils.
I use a lot of foils as well. I love them in my relationships because, again, it causes great banter. But a lot of my minor characters, because my main characters are very anti-hero-ish, like borderline villains usually. So my characters around them are very often a paladin type, where they're very good, they're very pure-hearted, and they kind of help lead those characters, help them with their decisions, and they play off of them very well for being so different. Whereas, the main character is, well, my solution to this is I'm going to stab them, whereas some of the characters around them will be like, you might want to stop and think about this for a second. It helps when you need to know your main character in order to know who needs to be around them to help enhance their story.
A lot of my characters morph through different archetypes. They may appear to be an antagonist, and then they morph into a foil, or somebody will pick up the role of the mentor briefly, just for that scene, because they know something that the main character or one of the main characters needs to find out.
I kind of like using mentor characters a lot, but I like to do like a bit of a twist on them, and I like to make them kind of unreliable mentors, because it's one of those things that kind of reflects life. Like when do you find anyone that knows everything, right? And it's like, and if you're in a story and it's like, again, trying to challenge characters, and when that mentor character is like, this is what you need to do, and then the character finds out that they were either missing some vital information or the mentor was completely wrong about it. And I kind of like flawed characters in general. Good flawed characters and bad flawed characters. I find them very interesting. So yeah, I like kind of doing it like a twist on the mentor.
What David just described reminds me so much of, what was that one protection against the dark arts teacher at Potter at Hogwarts? He was the one that was all famous, but he was just an idiot.
Lockhart.
Yeah.
Roy Lockhart.
That's what David just described. That's what I saw in my head. The guy going, "Try this, kids," and it's like, no.
And yeah, just melt all the bones instead of mending them. Yeah.
I think it's interesting because the read not only does the character trust the mentors, the readers do generally as well. So whenever the mentor character comes up, people recognize them, and you're programmed to trust and believe what they say. So it's fun when they actually have no idea what they're talking about, or they're doing it on purpose. They're trying to lead the character, the protagonist down a different path.
Characters have to have flaws, otherwise they're not interesting. They've got to screw up, they've got to make mistakes, and they don't even have to learn from them. They can make the same mistake again because guess what? So do we.
Why did I think trickster? Isn't the trickster one of the archetypes as well that we talk about sometimes, or like a synonym for that? And I really love that whole, I don't know, the betrayal of it, and you think they're their friend, but there's ulterior motives, and how that comes into play in what you're doing. For whatever reason, I love that portion of her, that type of character.
Mine would obviously be the antagonist, the villain. You know how much I love playing the villain. I make sure my villain's the nastiest bee he can be, and put my poor old MC through hell and back. But I love getting down and dirty. I love being the bad guy. And I think you need a bad guy in every story.
Yep.
No matter what genre you have to have the good versus evil, don't you? Otherwise, there'll be no conflict. There'll be no putting your character through shit if there wasn't a bad guy. So, yeah, that's the most important for me, and also the most fun to write.
And they just can't be evil, in my opinion, too. Like, they have to be bad for a reason. Like, they're the hero of their own story kind of thing, right? And what they're doing totally makes sense to them. And what they're doing, then that makes them outstanding if you can do that right.
My reader's favorite villain of mine, Fiona, in the Paranormal Detective series, she thought she was doing the best she could for all witches, trying to take down every other species, and that's exactly what Claudia is talking about. She was her own hero, whereas even her own species of magicians hated her guts, but she thought she was the hero.
Yep, a villain is never a villain in their own eyes.
None of us are.
Speak for yourself.
We develop our characters, we grade them, we take them through trials and tribulations. But what are some of the characteristics that you tend to lean on that the reader doesn't often get to see? What are some things that you value in a character for yourself to move that forward?
I can't have a wimpy female. From the fantasy, she has powers. She's immortal. She's also got an evil soul within her, but she starts off being someone who's stubborn, refuses to help her people, and wimpy and moany until she's told to stop being a spoiled brat. And then you see who she really is, and she's someone you don't mess with. And when it comes to the females that I put through hell in my thrillers and my dark romances, they're not going to be weeping in a corner. They're going to stay strong, and they're going to fight. And it's the strength of that character going through all that I think makes them, the reader, connect to the character and keeps the pages turning, because so many people said in the reviews, I didn't want a wimpy female like they are in all the other books. I'm so glad that she was strong. And I thought, yeah, well, you need that.
I actually got that same exact compliment on my first Paranormal Detectives book with Angelica. And that's not something I tried for. Rather, what I try for with my main characters, no matter their gender, is resilience. My characters have all gone through hell before their stories actually start. None of them have really had a great life. Whether it was something as human and simple as bullying, another was orphaned, and another witnessed her mother's murder. So what I put behind my characters is that strength and resilience to keep going, no matter what life throws at them, no matter what I throw at them. And that's something that I hope the readers take away, is that, while they can deal with all of this stuff, I can deal with whatever's going on in my life. Because that's how I used to deal with things when I was a kid with books.
Resilience is a really good way to put it, Lily. My characters, they get beat up and battered around as well. And it's funny because I write in, the subgenre of hope punk, which is the response to grimdark. It's not saying that everything is going to be good, but it is saying that the future is going to be what you make of it. And so, okay, yeah, my characters are going to get knocked down. They are going to stand back up, and they're going to take another swing at it.
It's so interesting because now thinking about it, I realize I really have a lot of characters that have this sort of this honor bound in difficult situations. And then there's a lot of self-sacrificing. I recognize now that I'm thinking about it, where these characters, they know that they have to do something. It's bigger than them. They need to make the difficult choices and sacrifice things that they really had no intention of sacrificing, but it's what it takes to get it done. And they got to get it done.
So is it like their moral compass?
Their moral compass. Yep. Yeah.
For me, one of the main things is fluidity. I'm writing a series called the Dark Heart series, and it's about a vampire that's been prophesized that he's going to fight in the end of in Armageddon, but they don't know which side he's going to be on. And so this character started like the first book is really a historical romance that has a paranormal edge to it. And then he goes from a love interest just trying to survive in the colony of Roanoke to sees his mother get murdered and he gets left for dead. He gets the offer for revenge. So then he turns into an anti-hero and goes on a killing spree, which I'm hoping from everything I've shown at this point that the reader is actually rooting for him as he's doing some of this brutal stuff. But now I've got him into the next book and he's not as mad anymore. Like the situation he was put through, like he was pushed past his limit to become a monster, which is what hell wants him to be. But now he's not mad anymore, and he's sort of mellowing out. And so heaven's trying to get in his ear and try to pull him back and forth. So he's constantly going to be in a flux. It's a giant redemption arc.
I do a lot of the things that everyone else has mentioned are things that are important to I do write a lot of my epic fantasy is kind of female character led, so that's to make them feel real and try and make them strong but actually still be feminine. I think is important because a lot of male authors in particular, when they write female characters, just write them like they're men and just and it's like, well, that's this try to capture the correct kind of feeling of the characters. But one of the things that I kind of do, because in your question you asked specifically like what the readers may never see, I do kind of full family histories for all of my characters, and like some of that information will come out in the books and everything. But what I like to do in particular is to see where they are in terms of like, do they have any siblings and where are they in that kind of order? Like, are they firstborn, are they second, third, fourth, fifth, or whatever, and what their relationships was really informs a character as to where, if they have like a few older brothers or sisters, or if they're like the only girl in a family of like 5 boys or something, you know what I mean? Like this kind of stuff. And I think it's an interesting thing to kind of look at, because then you can really figure out things and find things out about your characters.
The one thing that we can't control when we create characters and put them into stories is which ones the readers gravitate towards the most. And I'm curious from each of you to find out, is there a character that you had no design, none whatsoever, of other than just being whatever character arc they were going to be, whatever, small role they were going to play in the story, that either you made bigger in as a series goes along, or that you've written something for that you never intended to write for because the audience demanded it?
Yes, that would be Sean in the Paranormal Detective series. He was supposed to show up for book 5. Basically, I needed a translator, and I also needed someone who could witness a bunch of murders. And I had already sort of established his character, so I thought it was a perfect time to bring him in. And in the end, he was supposed to go away to another country and help the Paranormal Investigative Division there. And it was both him and the readers, whereas he told me, he's like, I have a really big story to play. So I wrote his solo novel, and readers to me and said, "Oh, I love him. I can't wait to see him in the rest of the series." I'm like, he's not in the rest of the series, but he wound up being in books 5 through 8 in total of the Paranormal Detectives, and he is the reader's absolute favorite. He's one of my favorites as well. He was one of my mom's favorites, and I remember one of the messages I got as I was writing the last book was, "You've killed almost every other character. Please leave Sean alone." And another one was, "I will never forgive you if you kill Sean in the last book." I'm like, I'm not going to tell you what happens, but I'm glad everyone loves him so much because he wasn't supposed to be anybody, but the readers demanded.
Yeah, I had a character like that, Daniela Garcia. She was written into the first book of the Artemis Wars series because I had a clever nickname for her, Double Dip. And I had to come up with a reason for it, so I said, fine. She's the only person who's been cross-trained as an engineer and a pilot, fully cross-trained on both, fully rated. Well, it turns out that was important in the second, third, and fourth books, and by the fourth book, she's really become a major character, so much so that in the short story collection, she actually has a couple stories about her. She had a story that needed to be told. I just didn't know what it was when I started writing it.
Yeah, I've had a couple in both the series that I do. So in the urban fantasy one and the epic fantasy one, it's always the characters that you actually want to be a little bit more mysterious, and people just seem to just like flip over them, and they're just like, I said, well, I made them mysterious on purpose, because for whatever reasons, and you get people just really kind of attached to them. And I should have really known, especially in the urban fantasy one, because this character is a Nephilim, which is a cool creature to kind of play with, and he has like he pops in and out of the second book in the series quite a lot. And after it came out, the main comment was like, is he going to be in the next book? Is he going to be doing more things? Is he going to have this? And at the time, the answer was no. He's not really going to be in the next book at all. And I was like, I have to just put him in the book a little bit more and just figure out a way of getting him in there. And I do like writing, and then in the epic fantasy series, it was the same thing again. It was a supporting character who was kind of instigated quite a lot of the plot, but was a supporting character. And it got to the point where, again, people were always talking about him, where I've just written a prequel from that is like there's two POV characters in the prequel, and he's one of them, because it was like, fine, I'm just going to give you this part of his life that if you want it, it's there, you can go and read it. But it's fun. It's nice when that happens, because you never really know what characters are going to connect with people sometimes, and you try and make them all compelling. So it's really, when people do kind of become very attached to any character that you make, it's always a great compliment.
I did a really, really dark retelling of The Wizard of Oz. When I was sending it to some of the alpha readers, the character that got the most response was actually the shoes that she put on were actually sentient items. And so the shoes were constantly whispering in her ear, talking in her head. And that's what they loved, because it taught me how to write two running conversations going on at the same time and making it fit and make it make sense. The shoes become like a mentor to her, and they wanted me to do more with the shoes. Kind of fun. The shoes are one of my favorite characters.
That's our first. I don't think we've ever had an inanimate object be a favorite character. That's pretty awesome.
Lawless Justice. There was one small little character in a big fight between the kittens and another female MC. And it was actually the leader of the other MC group that then had her own book as Road Rage. And she is the main character in Road Rage. And it actually mentions the kittens in the book. So it sort of brings them like a little thread together. In Times of Violence was supposed to be just a one book. I was supposed to write one book, and that was it. And it was the fans that demanded a sequel. And it wasn't because of the characters, because they're hardly in the second book. It was the storyline I think they loved, and they wanted to continue on with this outlaw, bad boys sort of type rebel fiction.
I'm actually in the middle of writing a series where I had a scene, and it's the main character, Ravine, and she's waking up somewhere from a sleep pod. And anyway, it wasn't supposed to happen, but suddenly he took over the whole show in that scene. And suddenly all of the future books, I could see him, what was going to happen with this particular character, and he filled in all of these gaps that were still waiting to be filled. So it was kind of this neat, he just came on stage and said, hey, you got to deal with me now. I'm like, okay.
I told you it's the characters, you see?
It totally is, yeah.
What advice would you give to anyone struggling to find the character and their arc?
Listen to the character is the first thing. A lot of people want to take control, and they don't realize your characters know best. They're going to want to do things that maybe you don't like, maybe you didn't intend to. Write it out anyway. If it doesn't fit, you can always cut it later. But the first thing you need to do is you need to trust your character, and you need to get to know your character. Your character's always down the line. My characters do it to me. They're always going to surprise you. They're always going to have something hidden, especially if you're writing a series. However, you need to get in tune with that character. If you're sitting there and the character's not talking to you and the plot's not going forward, it could be because you're not being receptive enough. So my advice would be take some time, even open up a new document. Try actually talking to your character. I know maybe it sounds like I'm telling you to be, talk to the people in your head, but it's true. The more you get to know your character and the more you trust them, the easier your story is going to flow. Even if you're doing things that are against what the character wants, you still have to get to know what the character wants first before you can get into any of the meatier parts of the plot.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, totally agree.
I couldn't agree more with her. You can't force it. You've got to let the character come to you when they're ready. And I found that by the time you get done writing a character really well, you should be able to just have someone come up to you and go, okay, this situation happens. Your character is now here and this and this and this. And you should be able to just, I know what would happen. I know what they would do. You should know them like that. Their response to anything. And when you get that to know them like that, then you can really do some things with them. You can get creative. You can throw them in the craziest situations, and just it'll flow way better. If you try to force it or just cram, that square peg in a round hole, if you just keep trying to pound it, it's not going to work.
My advice, other than what Lee said, kudos to that, is to dream. Go to sleep thinking about your book, thinking about the plot, thinking about the scenes that you're going to be writing. Go to sleep thinking about it, and you're guaranteed to dream it. And if you have that dream diary beside you, as soon as you wake up, write down what you remember, and always keep a pad and a pen with you. You never know when inspiration's going to strike. You never know when the characters are going to talk to you. So always have that with you by your side.
Ooh, I'd go forward too and even try to provoke it and have some free writing sessions where your whole goal is, hey, it's this character and they're doing this, go. And just let the words out and don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about it. May never be used, but it's to try and get you inside of that character and get them in that mindset and just let it go.
We're the authors. We write down the words, but it's our characters' lives. It's their stories. So we need to listen to them. And the other thing I'm going to say is don't be afraid to change tracks. If you're writing and it's just not working, this character is just absolutely wrong for what you want them to do, maybe you're using the wrong character. Maybe you're focusing on the wrong person. Okay, change.
I have to
Everybody
ask.
in this room has some really strong imaginary friends.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody.
We're all nodding like
proud of it.
There's like
Proud of
45
it.
people in this meeting, Joe. You just don't realize
Right.
everybody got their characters talking.
Angelica's sitting at the surface like, I have opinions here. I need to talk to you about something.
David has his shadow.
That's my shadow.
Yeah, you're ready for a horror movie.
Yeah, that's just my life, really. So it's fine.
Cool. We'll play with this later to see what happens, Dave.